ComiCulture Radio is proud to be sponsored by Anchor FM. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. It gives you everything you need right in one place and for free, which you can use right from your phone or your computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great, and they'll even distribute it for you so you can be heard everywhere, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. What's more, you can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Now, all you have to do is download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
My name is Jeff.
I am Iron Man.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Wow.
Mr. Feeney? Mr. Feeney!
I'll swallow your soul! I'll swallow your soul! I'll swallow your soul!
Swallow this.
Hello there.
Loud is not allowed. Now you listen to me, mister. I work for a living. And I mean real work, not writing down gobbledygook.
Say, would you like a chocolate-covered pretzel?
Come on, flip the pickle, Morty. You're not going to regret it. The payoff is huge.
That's what she said.
Welcome to my world, bitch.
And now, ComiCulture Radio, with your host, Kevin Caldwell.
So, you're listening to ComiCulture Radio, nerd musings from beyond the former fringe. I'm your host, Kevin, and today we're pleased to have with us Mr. Benjamin Byron Davis. Benjamin's career spans 20-plus years across film and television, but he's probably most well-known for Dutch, the man with 1,000 plans, Randolin, from Rockstar Games' Red Dead Redemption series. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Kevin, I'm glad to be here.
All right, so to start things off, where did your passion for acting come from?
Well, that's a pretty big question. I think if I had to pinpoint it, it would probably be, growing up, I was the son of an artist, an art teacher, and she and my father both made the arts an important part of me and my brother's upbringing. I was particularly moved when I was about 9 years old. I was taken to see the national tour of Sweeney Todd, directed by Hal Prince, at the Colonial Theater in Boston, where I grew up. And George Hearn and Angela Lansbury were Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett, respectively. And I saw that production and was pretty well transformed by it. It was clear to me at that moment that I wanted to be working in the same medium that these two people were, with this amazing story. So I guess that would be the start of it. And then I was real fortunate in my adolescence to go to an arts program in Dover, Massachusetts called the Charles River Creative Arts Program, which is actually just celebrating their 50th year. And that is a place where me and a great many other people that are still working artists today sort of cut our teeth as young artists in training. And that led me to finally get my degree in acting at Tisch School of the Arts. I was at New York University training in the Playwrights Horizons Theater School program for my BFA. And from there it was off to, laboring in the theater.
Yeah. So, Red Dead was done using performance capture. Did you find that to be an odd transition from live action? It's
surprisingly not. We did performance capture on both Red Dead 1 and Red Dead 2. Red Dead 1 was a much more bare bones kind of version of it than what I encountered returning to the tech in Red Dead 2. But it's really, once you sort of get accustomed to it, it's actually a lot like working in a black box theater back when I was getting my degree at NYU. So you have the physical reality of everything that you're interacting with, any props, doors, chairs, what have you, and you have the other actors you're playing with right across from you. I think it more than anything, it's getting used to sort of some of the protocols, as it were. You've got to get the work that the actors are doing on their faces. You have that camera that's sort of mounted on a helmet in front of your face, and that can be, Kevin, if you're getting too close to somebody, you can end up knocking, into each other unexpectedly. Yeah. So we got good over time at really sort of navigating that. And then there's other, everybody is in spandex with Velcroed, ping pong balls on them, and that Velcro can create other sort of issues if you go in to pat somebody on the shoulder and you end up stuck to them or that sort of thing. So getting used to that was a challenge, but what's really so exciting about performance capture as a tech is how much it does to actually preserve the work that the actors are doing. So it's really quite remarkable, and I'll see the game and I'll see, delicate moments that maybe Roger had in a scene we were playing together that I remember very specifically on the day, looking right in his face and seeing them, and now years later see that very delicate work so well preserved by the work the animators do in bringing it to the finished product.
Yeah. So were you in full performance gear the entire time, or was there any necessity to go back and do any ADR in the booth?
Well, that's very well asked. I mean, I would say, I had to do some ADR, but I would say that the ratio of performance capture to ADR was probably less than 10%. I think I did. I was on the show from, I think it was nearly 5 years, and in that time, I think I did well over, a couple hundred days of performance capture, and I think maybe less than 20 days of ADR. Don't quote me on that, although I guess you are recorded.
Don't quote him.
I think that's about the ratio, and I think that's, for some actors, Dutch was everybody sort of got a different. Like Roger, I think probably did at least double that, and you'd have to ask him on Arthur. But it was principally, and this is honestly why, it's become a catch-all to refer to the work that's done in video games as voice acting. And I don't ever mean any disrespect to voice acting itself. I'm not a big fan of parsing acting into categories to begin with, but what we did is certainly not that. And so ADR is the right thing actually to call it, because just as you would on a feature film, if you work 5 months doing a feature, if you're in a bulk of scenes, you're going to end up going into the booth after the edit's done to clean up dialogue or to repair dialogue, and that's pretty much the same process here. So when you call it voice acting, you're conjuring an image of all of us, going in on our own days and reading lines off of the page, and it's the wrong way to express what we did, because we would get, with Dutch, I get huge monologues that I have to memorize, and not that I'm complaining, it's the actor's job to do it, but but we would rehearse these scenes together in the green room, and we all worked very closely as an ensemble. And anytime an actor from the cast is correcting somebody when they say it's not voice acting, it's performance capture, I think part of the reason we are so pushy about it is because of how integral our relationships with each other were to the work that we were able to bring to our roles.
Yeah, and nothing against voiceover at all, and I wasn't going there, but just as you were but like you said, performance capture is a totally different ballpark. So just a huge respect to that regard. I did want to ask about when you were riding the horses. Was it the same process as like the dragons from Game of Thrones, where it was just a regular riding on?
I think I'm allowed to. I'm still bound by a non-disclosure agreement. I will say that we did get up and down on horses that were not horses. They were saddles wrapped around oil drums, if I recall. But I do think, from what I've seen in the behind-the-scenes features for Game of Thrones, I think that the dragons that they rode on were on gimbals, and so there was a great deal of motion to them, and that was not the case for us. We would sometimes have gross movement accomplished in a variety of manners, but we never had something quite so robust in terms of motion control kind of work going on.
So it was more like just neighborhood bar, ride the bull kind of situation in a way where they pull on the rope.
I think Gus was pretty slick on his horse. So really all I had to do was get up and get down. And I think that the bulk of how the horses work, which are, I mean, let's hear it for the freaking horses in that game. They're just remarkable.
Yeah.
But I think that the animators are the ones to really get the credit. We did a little bit of sort of, imagining ourselves galloping, but I think it was made to look much better by the teams at Rockstar than we could have pulled off just sitting on a static horse.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Dutch was pretty good on his horse, but I did beat you every single time I raced you back to camp from, I think it was the swamp. So I don't know if I believe that 100%.
Well, I think that's bold of you to say. But I also think, I always let that win when I play that mission. What is after the moonshine in Rhodes, I think.
Yeah.
That ends up with a really lovely scene at the end. Dutch and the Count, who knows whether you won or he let you win.
Yeah, I do let Jack win when they're racing home from teaching him how to ride the horse back to Pronghorn. So it kind of makes up for it. I win against Dutch, but I let Jack win.
That's very good of you. That's very good of you. So, in fact, it seems like Dutch taught you well.
Yeah, I would say so.
So he let his son win, and you let your son win.
Yeah, exactly. So you spent 5 years working on this game. Not 5 years in totality, I understand it. It was broken up into parses and chunks. But did the process ever get to you going back and forth for X amount of days?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great question. You're an actor. It's the life you chose. So, it was, when things got intense, there were a couple of years where it was pretty much I was there almost as much as I was here. So that was a lot of travel. It was a lot of living out of the hotel. Again, first world problem. But if there was I teach a small scene study class out here, and I had to. The work became intense enough that I had to put that on hold, and so you end up having to put a lot of things on hold. And if there was a challenge, if anything, it was the non-disclosure agreement was so really airtight, and it was important that it was, and we were all quite dedicated to keeping secrets. But it is kind of isolating to have to tell friends and family, I'm going to be out of town for 3 weeks. No, I can't tell you why. And then, as the years went on, people would guess more and more. But I'll maybe finish where I began. It's the problem any actor wants, which is to be so busy with work that you don't have time for much else. And there was one year, I guess it was over 2 years, but I managed to with Rockstar's really sort of help in terms of scheduling. I was able to actually do 2 feature films in the time that I was doing Dutch on Red Dead, and they were really quite gracious in allowing me the time to do that. But that was a hell of a year when I had, I'd done the Belko experiment and had been for 45 days in Bogota, South America, and then I was back to New York working on Red Dead, and then I think it was almost less than a year later that I booked Peyton Reed's Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then that had me. So I had a season of, I was going from New York to Atlanta, to New York, to San Francisco, to Los Angeles, to New York. It got a little dizzying, but again, it's there's not a thing to complain about, but it is. It's real sensitive of you to recognize it. Yeah, it does take a toll. I'm still
absolutely.
I'm still kind of figuring out what it is to be off the road, and I prefer being on the road, to be honest.
Yeah. So speaking about the rest of the main cast as well as you spent, like we said, 5 years in the minds of these characters, although with Rob Weedoff, Steve Palmer, and yourself, you were even longer factoring in the first Redemption. Outside of select TV series and stage plays, that's more time than most actors ever get to spend with their characters. Do you think that helps your performance because you get to be with them for so much longer?
I think again, that's another great question. I think there's no doubt about that. It's a rare position to find yourself in. I mean, I first performed. I did my first scene as Dutch in 2009. So we're 10 years on that I've known this guy, and yeah, I think does it look it is. I don't expect that I'm going to have an opportunity like the one that I had with Dutch Van der Linde again, just because it's such a rare opportunity to begin with, that I would get to have a small yet rather significant role in, the 2010 Game of the Year that I think I'm so proud that I was able to be a part of that. And I kind of hoped against hope that there was enough story left to tell that I might get a call from Rockstar down the road. So when that actually came to pass, I knew, and I think, I can't speak for Steve or for Rob, but I knew that this is a big responsibility, and I did not want to screw it up. And luckily, I was working with everybody at Rockstar Games, not to mention just this extraordinary ensemble of actors that I was surrounded with, that everybody was committed to making sure that we did right by the original title and that we improved upon the storytelling. And I think, there's more than a few examples of prequels in popular culture, and not many of them are really feel like they were always meant to be there. Like I think about The Godfather Part 2, which has the extraordinary sort of rise of Vito Corleone, played by De Niro, and that so seamlessly, it feels like it always was meant to be there, even though they didn't know it was going to be there when they did the first one. And I know that's a pretty bold thing to compare something you worked on with the Godfather saga, but I do think that what Rockstar put together is something that is quite remarkable. And again, I can't speak for Steve or Rob, but when you're approaching any role, you're trying to find sort of the legitimacy of the character and the history of the character, and you're looking to find sort of emotional triggers within the world and the work that you can really, as a person and a performer, you can anchor yourself to. And when it came to when it comes to Dutch, he lives inside of me. I am very so having had 10 years to kind of give him room to set up shop inside my head and my heart. It's a very different thing going to approaching that character than anything else I've worked on. And in fact, Kevin, when I finished with the game, and I found myself going in on auditions, there was a bit of an adjustment to not being him anymore, like returning to acting as an actor as opposed to acting as Dutch, if that makes any sense. But so that's, again, what a lucky problem as an actor to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, you had the privilege of being a returning character in this entry. We didn't get to see a whole lot of Dutch in the first game. We only heard minute snippets about his past and the dialogue leading up to his reveal. Did you fashion a backstory for him in your head, and if so, line up with how he was portrayed in the second game?
The answer to that is no. I don't do that. That's never been a part of the way that I work. In my mind, if it's not on the page, it's irrelevant. So I just work with what is in front of me. What's interesting to me is when we did the first one, all I knew, I knew more about Dutch after I finished playing the game than I knew about Dutch when I was playing Dutch in the first game. All I knew about Dutch, because of the secrecy surrounding Rockstar's process, and the specific product that they're working on at any given time. All I really knew, what I was told is I remember when I showed up for, I went in and I auditioned, and I knew it went well, because they said, we don't know what it's going to be, but we're going to have a job for you. And then a couple of months later, there was the job, and I showed up, and, it's me, Rob, Steve, and I were all living in Los Angeles when they did the first one, because the first one we shot out in Santa Monica. That's why we were hired to work for the second one, even though that was in New York, because we were established characters. But the first day, I think it was our director, one of the finest directors I've ever worked for in any medium, if not the finest, is a wonderful guy called Rod Edge. And he and I think one of the producers sort of pulled me aside and said, so your character is, here's what you need to know. He was a gang leader. He is extraordinarily well-read. He's an excellent orator, and he's lost his mind. And that was what I had to go on. And beyond that, the sort of the vocal trappings of the character came from a character I had done for a short film a few years earlier called Black Eyed Sue. And that was a character from a script written by my co-star, who also directed alongside Ben Simonetti. Joe Fria had written this script for Black Eyed Sue, and I played this guy Osborne Krall, who is effectively, he's Dutch Vanderlinde, only he's a total moron. But I had used that voice in the audition, which is, it's my voice. It's my resonance and tone quality. But he's got hard R's, and he's got sort of a wispy break in his voice all the time. He doesn't always support his voice properly when he shouts, and it creates these cracks that I have in the back of my head my old voice instructor, Chuck Jones, telling me how bad it is, because I should be supporting my voice properly, but I think it works for Dutch. And so that was really all I had. I had that sort of brief sentence of who he was, and I had this sort of tonal palette of hard R's and sort of wheezy speech patterns that came from this short film I did. And that's where Dutch came from in the first one. And then when I played it, you know, you learn so much about the character throughout the telling of the story of the game. So as I played through the game the first time, I was like, I really hope Dutch is the leader of this game. And then it started to sound like, oh my God, I think Dutch is the leader of this game. And then I thought, oh my God, so I was discovering as it went really what the nature of the character was. So that made the return all the more exciting because now I really sort of knew who he was. I knew where he came from, and I knew coming into the sequel or the prequel what would happen and what wouldn't happen. I knew I wasn't going to die. Spoiler alert. And
are you reading my questions right now?
No, I don't know. Am I? Why don't you tell me what you're about to ask?
So here's my next question. You can finish. You were leading right into it perfectly. So it's Red Dead 2 being a prequel. We know what Dutch's fate would have been leading into the events of the first game. Knowing that you make it out, did that give you the opportunity to be a little more charismatic with your portrayal of him?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And we talked about that a lot. One thing that came up more than once was Robert Duvall's character in Apocalypse Now. You remember him?
Yeah.
He played Kilgore, and he's the one who loves to smell of napalm in the morning. But there's a line in there from Martin Sheen where he says there's something about him. He had this weird light around him, and you knew he wasn't going to get so much as a scratch. And that was, to my mind, because we couldn't play on the thought that Dutch is going to die because we know he's not, because it's a prequel. So we sort of went in the other direction, and there's a moment that I think you can still sort of see in the Braithwaite scene that I think is so rightly. A lot of people enjoy that a lot. I think it's pretty remarkable, that whole sequence of going to the Braithwaite Mansion and wreaking havoc. But right at the beginning of that scene, Dutch tells John to be calm, and then he walks out and he calls out the family in that well-armed mansion and shoots at, all these armed guys on the porch. And the whole gang scrambles for cover, and Dutch just walks. And that was something that we did quite on purpose, that Dutch takes his time getting into cover and doesn't ever crouch. He never scurries. He's always quite confident. And we did another scene like that happened was the first train mission at the very, very beginning of the game. The first time we go after one of we steal the train heist information from the O'Driscolls.
Yeah.
It's in the trailer, right? Dutch says, "Wake them up a little," and everybody starts shooting at the train. That was at one point, I think, early on, there was shots coming at us from the train at the same time. I think they got rid of that, but that was one of the first times when it was real clear with me talking with the animators and talking with Rob about Dutch that Dutch isn't afraid of getting shot. He isn't afraid. He knows he's not. He knows his number isn't up, and so that was kind of a fun thing to play with. And so whether that manifests itself in his charisma, I don't know, but it was certainly something that I think helped him lose touch with reality, and that was useful to me as an actor, was this kind of idea of that he was invincible, and taking somebody who thinks he's invincible and having him face really great challenges. Most important, losing access to the trusted voices in his life, Hosea Chief among them. I think it's important too at this point to make clear that my opinions about Dutch and his motivations are my own, and the character is not mine. So the character really belongs to the audience, and I may say things that my opinion about Dutch may differ quite broadly with your listeners' opinion about Dutch, and I think that's just fine. I certainly don't assert any ownership over how he's perceived, but I can give some insight into where I was coming from in playing him.
As long as we all have the same opinion about Micah, anyone else can have their opinion about any other character.
Micah, I love Peter Bloomquist very much, and working with him is a wonderful experience that he makes purposefully challenging in his way. I think I could say that. He is a spectacular actor and a spectacular guy.
Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, Mike is a POS.
Peter Bloomquist, amazing guy. Micah Bell, POS.
That's it in a nutshell. But it is, people really, you consider what he's achieved in creating a character that is so roundly despised. That's not easy to do, and do it so well. I mean, that's a performance that gets under people's skin. I think it's just remarkable.
Yeah. So while I was doing research for this, I watched a panel he did with Roger Clark, who played Arthur Morgan, for those who don't know, at a con recently where you likened video games to being closer to literature. And I think that's a beautiful analogy. But I think it could be narrowed down even further and be related to a Choose Your Own Adventure book. You don't even have to play the main campaign to have this be one of the most fun video games ever. Do you think that adds to the sense of wonder open world video games create?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's likely 2 weeks ago in Boston. We were together at a con in my hometown. That was a lot of fun. And we had a particularly excellent moderator on that panel. I wish I could remember her name to thank her for it. But I've got a friend who's a writer out here in L.A., and he played the game. And I kept, he's a dear friend, so his opinion is important to me, and it was a lot of years, and I was eager to hear what he thought about, what he made of the game. And I sort of didn't ask, and I didn't ask, and I didn't ask. And finally, after about a month or two of it being out, I was like, why won't you talk to me about the game? And he says, I'm not really doing much with the story. And I said, wait a minute, what? He said, yeah, I've been playing it every day, but I'm not doing much with the story. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? He said it like it had happened to him, right? He said, something happened in Valentine, and it got really dark. And I killed a lot of people. And so for the last month, I've just been up in the mountains hunting. And it was, to me, that's something that, you can compare it to literature, but it's not like in War and Peace. You can roam around the countryside of Russia, or see what St. Petersburg looked like in granular detail. It's all inside your mind, and what Rockstar has done, and I'm speaking particularly with, this isn't just a GTA game, which is extraordinary in its scope and the technical prowess of all these things. This is a period piece. So they had to get their history correct, and in a lot of ways, they got it profoundly correct. So that I still will stand by the literature point, but I do think, as somebody who in college and before college spent a great deal of time watching Star Trek: The Next Generation, there's something to the holodeck about all of this too. That no one's actually been to Valentine or to Rhodes or to Saint Denis for that matter, but if you've played the game enough, you know how to get to all those places, and you know what they sound like, and sort of what they feel like, and what the temperature is, and what the people are like, and it is. It's a bit mind-boggling to realize that you're a small part of this extraordinary form that really Rockstar invented, and I think I can say quite confidently, as great as the other games that have been inspired by Rockstar's achievement, I don't know that anybody's topped it.
Yeah. So, on that same panel, you gave a very eloquent response to the question regarding the character's death that you felt the hardest. And you said you actually broke into tears leaving the scene. It was with Micah and Arthur. And I can't look at that scene the same way now after your sentiment towards it. Is there another moment in the game that hits you equally as hard?
Well, that means a lot to hear, man. I will suggest, though, I want to reiterate that my perspective of Dutch should not superimpose itself or supersede anybody else. I'm not correct. I'm just the guy that played him. He belongs to the people that care about the character, and I think if I did my job well enough, you can have a robust argument about what is really motivating Dutch. So I don't ever want it to be considered the final word on it. But yeah, that scene hit me the hardest, mostly because of where I was coming from, was this idea of his sort of infallibility, his invulnerability, and he's ultimately becomes completely vulnerable. He doesn't get killed, but he gets destroyed. He isn't who he hoped he was, and he sees that at the end. And that's a terrible journey to take him on. In terms of scenes that created that kind of emotional heft in me, there's quite a few. On the second game in particular, it's not a big moment. It doesn't really stand out, I don't think. But there's a moment in Guarma when Dutch is exhausted and they've arrived at the campsite and he's still sort of on autopilot. He's on autopilot, sort of giving orders to Bill and to Micah and to Arthur, and he's laying down as he does it. And then he finds it in him to say that he's sorry, which is not something that Dutch does often. And it was a tiny little moment, but I left work that day and I felt like I found something true right there. And so that always makes you feel like you had a good day.
Yeah, that one actually stands out in my head as well. But I think for me, the one that stands out to me the most is Arthur's last ride to camp, where that somber song, That's the Way It Is, plays with the montage of all his past successes. And I was like, that's the most beautiful cinematic I've ever seen. And I cry like every single time I go through it. But that was the one for me.
Well, think about that, right? I mean, I've seen it said over and over again that that extraordinary song from Jose Gonzalez of Far Away that plays when you ride in Mexico for the first time in the original Red Dead is one of, it was at the time it was revolutionary, and it was pointed to over and over again as one of the most remarkable moments in gaming. You figure that they knew that they might have to top that, but they didn't even try to top it. You go through this game and you encounter all of these moments. That's the way it is, being one of them. But I also love at the end of Epilogue 1, and all of a sudden I realized I was working on a project that Willie Nelson worked on. I mean, that's pretty amazing too. So there is, they did not so dedicated to creating the best product that they know how to make, and it's true of every person working there they're driven by that sort of commitment.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Jose Gonzalez songs from the foot. I had forgotten about that until the moment you said it. Now I'm remembering. The thing that I love about Red Dead in particular is, yeah, there's a soundtrack, but there's not actual like songs all the way through. And in particular with Red Dead, I think adding that song going into Mexico, and I think the other time is after Dutch falls off the cliff and John goes home to his family, there's another song at that point, and I can't remember which one it was, but I was like, that's so poignant, and it's such a perfect place for it. And they really do know exactly where to put them.
Well, but then you think about it from a narrative structure perspective, and they're doing something very sophisticated. They're telling you, basically the song in Mexico, that's the end of Act 1, the start of Act 2. And then the song after Dutch meets his fate, that song, that's the end of Act 3 into what? And you have no idea what to expect. You've never been to Beaches Hope before. And these guys, when I say it's literary and cinematic and all of those things, it is. I know that there's some people that are focused solely on gameplay, and there's some titles, many titles, that are just about gameplay. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with those titles or people that prefer them. But for me, I'll play maybe 2 or 3 single-player titles a year, and they'll always be narrative-driven, and that's the thing that holds my attention, because I just sort of think it's such an amazing format for storytelling. Whether it makes you think of War and Peace, whether it makes you think of Choose Your Own Adventure, what it's doing is it's making you think about yourself, which is what good stories tend to do. So their choices of if you were making a movie, you'd call it spotting, which is where in the film is the song going to go. But where they choose to put those sort of standout moments is not only is it not accidental, they are very, very sophisticated storytellers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the most compelling things in the narrative is the Downs family. You go from killing the patriarch over measly debt to straight up giving the mother and son the chance of a new life. That latter part is optional, but I think it perfectly encapsulates Arthur's journey of facing his mortality and ultimately led to his redemption as much as helping John's family get out did. What's your take on that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I hope you don't find this to be a cop-out, but that's a question I wouldn't want to answer. I think that's for Roger Clark to speak to. I can just say, as somebody who participated but just to say that I think that the work of him and all the actors responsible for those roles was, as is true across the board, it was really quite exceptional. And it was quite a joy to play. And again, it speaks to Rockstar's great narrative skill that the stakes were so high. Other than that, I think I'd leave that for people more closely associated with the work to talk about.
Yeah. So Dutch gives a nearly identical speech to John and the army right before I plummet down a cliff. It's one of those recognizable lines of dialogue in the entire game. And how did you react when you saw that you were going to almost mirror that same dialogue in the second game?
I was scared. I was scared to death of that. I saw those pages and I didn't quite get it. I thought it was stepping on what I thought was one of the greatest scenes I'd ever been a part of, and it scared the hell out of me. But as I had to do over and over again in this process, I had to do my job, but B, I trusted And that's not a word that you often hear when it comes to a major project like this. But I had to trust in our director, Rod Edge, and his assurances, and trust, obviously, in the extraordinary writing that I've become so familiar with. But it did scare me. And we spent a lot of time watching the original scene, and we didn't want to be, like, I took pains to make sure that I wasn't echoing cadences or doing things that would be impossible. In other words, it would be impossible for Dutch to remember every word that he said exactly the way he said it over all those intervening years. But so we did do it, and I still was a little trepidatious about it. But then I got to see it. I think the next day they were layering in more soldiers. So when they do that, they play back the original scene and sort of add them to it. I'd have to violate my NDA to go into more detail about how that works. But I sat in the room that next day and heard the way the scene played and was much more relaxed about all of it. And now I think of it as being this rather extraordinary idea that Dutch is invoking his relationship to Arthur when he dies. And he's not just remembering that, he's remembering his failure. And where Dutch was unable to do right by Arthur while he lived, there's some sense, it's one way to look at it anyway, is that there's some sense that at the end, Dutch doesn't, not only does he not force John to kill him, he won't let him, because Dutch doesn't want that to be on John's conscience. And without being, there's no way that he would have brought up Arthur in that moment, but he does bring up Arthur by invoking the last time he was faced with an impossible choice on the side of the cliff. And I think there's great poetry to it that I've become very fond of.
Yeah, it's definitely a very beautiful moment. So, do you think it would be fun to show Dutch and Hosea teaming up together as a youth? Just to note, Benjamin's answer is not an endorsement of any upcoming game or DLC. Don't spread false rumors on the internet. Dutch has killed people for less.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I adore Curzon Dobell as an actor and as a person. So I would covet quite greedily any opportunity I would have to work with him again in any capacity whatsoever. And again, I'm an actor. I sing for my supper. So if every year I get older, I get to play Dutch a year younger, okay, I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with that. But I certainly, if I had to predict the story that we were going to tell with two, or even if I'd been in charge of it, which, like I said, my head doesn't think that way, we would have gotten a much different story than the one that Rockstar came up with. And thank God we didn't. Thank God we got what we got, because we are left with this extraordinary character in Arthur Morgan. And this extraordinary sort of group of people that were all dreamers together, and they met a very, very. They were doomed to what they were doomed to, but there was great romance to the way they all came together, and I think particularly with Curzon's Hosea. We were about halfway through the process when I started to really realize how important Hosea was. And that started to inform our working relationship more and more, Curzon and I. And we we bonded in a way that I think reads in the work we got to do with each other. We trust each other very, very much. And I think it's very important. I think Hosea is both an enabler of Dutch, but also a deterrent to the sort of darker spaces that Dutch's mind can go. And I think without Hosea, we see what happens. And so it was really important to me, in as much as I had any control over it, it was really important to me to make sure that was understood, at least in the way not only we intersected with each other, but the way we talked about each other when we weren't in scenes together. And I think you can see that in both of our performances, that there is this real sense of unity between these two men, and that this road they're on together, they built, and they're responsible for it.
Yeah, there's a line that stands out to me after Hosea dies, where Dutch actually says that he misses Hosea, and it was so pure. Like, he was so genuine in saying that, and so I definitely get what you're saying. But even when they weren't next to each other, they still talked about each other, and they were brothers. And once again, Benjamin's answer was not an endorsement of any upcoming game or DLC.
No, absolutely not. And I certainly wouldn't know one way or the other on that. And if I did, which I don't, I wouldn't be able to comment one way or the other on that.
So at the end of next month, the game will have been out for an entire year already, which is crazy. Is it satisfactory knowing that people are still raving over this piece of art and still lauding, and will still be lauding it forevermore?
I don't even, Kevin, I don't know what to do with that. It's too big an idea to fit in my head. I will tell you, though, there is something, and I said this to my friend and our director, Rod Edge, right after I think I finished the game the first time, and maybe even I'd gotten as far as the Bronte missions, but I was calling him on the daily as I was moving through the work we'd done together for all those years. And there's something as an actor who started in theater that's really very bittersweet about working on stage, which is it disappears. There's something ephemeral to the work an actor does on stage. You can do a recording of the play, but it kind of saps the work of its soul. It isn't what happened. You can't quite capture, and slide performance capture is such a great word for it, but you can't quite capture a live performance, particularly a stage performance, in a permanent way. Now you can, when you work on film and television, for better or worse, that stuff doesn't go anywhere, But it isn't entirely, you think of any performance you admire on camera, and I would say a good 80% of those performances are not a single take, if not more than that. So it's the actor's work, but it's also the editor's work, the composer's work, and so what was actually done on the day isn't always preserved in the strictest sense. That said, it doesn't go anywhere. So that settles the sort of ephemeral problem with being an actor working in theater. But what we did on Red Dead, and I think what happens in performance capture is something quite unique. I'm not necessarily saying superior or inferior, but it doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
There are scenes in Red Dead, and the one I've talked about the most and I'll stick with because it keeps me out of dangerous water in terms of violating any non-disclosure agreement, is the opening scene in Culture, where we're all coming together into that, I think it's a church, where the pews are getting moved out of the way. Davy's lying on Davy's dead, and the coins are put on his eyes, and we all have that scene, and Pearson and Grimshire told to put the camp together, and then Dutch and Arthur go out in the night looking for Micah. In that whole scene, much like the film, it's got music throughout. It's got great, extraordinary, not mentioned enough, sound. The sound design on the game is so remarkable. But it's also a performance where there's 15 actors all together, effectively doing theater in the round. And while there are internal cuts and close-ups and all those things, those didn't really happen. Those were done after the fact. And what you really have is I think, a good 10-page, 5-minute scene that's performed from top to bottom by 15 actors who have been alongside each other for 3 years at that point, maybe 4 even. And we're all really in touch with who our characters are, really in touch with what the relationships are. And that is captured. And that is not going anywhere. And to me, that's the thing that is the most remarkable about being so lucky as to have been a part of now 2 of these titles. One is that I'm so proud of the work and to have been a part of these really extraordinary groups of people, but also that work is not going anywhere. So as someone who has worked off and on in the theater for the better part of his life, I recognize the value of something durable. And I guess I hope this answers your question, but I am so proud to be a part of it and just overwhelmed and by the extraordinary fans and the response that we've gotten both critically and popularly from people all over the world. It's just, it's overwhelming. It's humbling. I'm quite grateful. And I'm doing my best to remain grounded. And it's not hard to do, because now I'm back looking for another job. So we'll see what comes next. But it is certainly the highlight of my career so far is my entanglement with this outlaw, Gus Vanderlyn.
Yeah. Listeners, Ben's looking for work. Go ahead and give him a call. I just wanted to say I wasn't going to put this in, but you brought up that you hope you're answering my questions correctly. You're giving the best answers. This is a great conversation. I'm not going to mention anyone in particular, but I've had interviews where they just say, yeah, next, but these are beautiful answers I couldn't have ever begged for. So thank you for answering them at all, and I'm having the best time right now asking these.
Well, that makes me happy to hear, Kevin. I'm really glad you reached out, and I'm glad, I don't know much. I haven't been able to hear any of your previous interviews, but I've read about your station and the community in Oregon. I'm just delighted to be able to be talking with you and with your listeners, and thank you for all that you do to promote, popular culture and keep your listeners informed. I think it's a great thing. Yeah.
So one of my favorite parts of the game is the unfortunately optional fishing trip with Arthur and Jose after rescuing Trelawney. By the way, not a lot of people talk about how great Trelawney is. He's one of my favorite characters. Anyway, back to the question. On that optional fishing trip, you really get to see the quote-unquote old guard having some real camaraderie. Was that a fun scene to capture?
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Well, we're sitting there in the green room memorizing that song together. I guess there's 2 songs, We Be Free, Young Mariners, and then there's the other one that's a little bit more bawdy. But getting to do that scene, that was one of the first last days that we had. We had a couple of last days where we thought we were done, but then we'd have to come back and do a little bit more. But so it was appropriately maudlin and a bit saccharine, for lack of a better word. We knew that we already knew all the awful stuff that was going to happen when we did that. So it was a real pleasure for all of us to sort of return to happier times. And Yeah, I won't soon forget the day that we did that, and with Roger pretending to row and us sitting in our little skiff, singing happily and poorly.
Any chance we can get a little rendition right now?
Oh, hell no. No.
Okay.
If you like the song, go play the game again. We'll hear it again.
Well, since he asked, I'll go play the game again. That's a fair request. So, are there things that were cut that you wish would have made the final cut? That sounded really weird. I remember hearing something about a mission involving robbing the Rhodes Bank, which I would have loved to have seen fleshed out.
Well, wait a minute. No, there is a mission where you rob the Rhodes Bank.
Really?
You and Uncle and Charles. What's that?
Is it in the deluxe version?
Well, I don't know. I think I have the deluxe version.
Okay.
I will say, Dan Houser pointed to a sequence that involved some bounty hunters from Boston in an interview that he did. So I don't think I'm letting the cat out of the bag to mention that happened. And that was going to be a really fun train-bound mission that I guess was just not coming together. And I hate to miss that because we all got pretty good with our 6-shooters, but I think that there was one sequence in there where I had to take out 2 guys on opposite sides of a train car and nail the flourish of the guns back into the holsters. And I got that done pretty good that day, and I really hate that that's not in there, just so I could show my brother.
I still remember a mention of that, where you rescued Trelawney again, Arthur and Charles, and they made mention of some, like, super bounty hunters. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. These guys that were coming, I think that the idea was we'd have to sneak on the train in Annisburg and deal with them before the train made its way to Rhodes. And
okay.
But here's the thing. Rockstar is, if it's not up to their standards, it's gone.
Yeah.
And this was just that. For whatever reasons, they weren't happy with it, and they cut it. And it just, again, speaks to what a great group of storytellers they are, and how willing they are to move on if something is not working. And apparently that was that instance there.
Yeah. So as much as Red Dead 2 is Arthur Morgan's story, it's equally as much John Marston's story, given that the end of the game leads directly into the events of the first one. Was it fun seeing the epilogue as John's family getting to be just so fun? I replayed the mission where you build John's house at least a dozen times. The montage with John, Charles, and Uncle is just so incredibly.
Well, it was a lot of fun for me, just because I would hear I had nothing to do with any of that stuff. So I would be at work sometimes, and they would be talking about the fact that they were building a house, but to get to actually play it was a real joy, because there was, I had a very, very solid understanding of the story and its structure throughout Arthur's life, but then the epilogues were largely unknown to me until I got to play them. So on that level, it was a great deal of fun.
I mean, I was really annoyed because I had just gotten John's hair and beard right where I wanted them, and that montage happened, and it messed it all up, and I was really annoyed.
Well,
but
on behalf of the entire cast and crew, I'm very sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Benjamin, where's Gavin? I remember my first playthrough, and during the epilogue years later, I was going through tall trees, and there that guy was looking for Gavin, and I had to pause because I was laughing so hard. That was like one of the most comedic things in the entire game.
Yeah, so Gavin, well, look, I love those little details that they put into all of the games that they make. what I love about that is the poor guy, you see his degradation over the years as he's off looking for his lost mate. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know where he is. And frankly, if I look at it from Dutch's perspective, I don't much care.
Yeah.
But it is something that poor fellow's out still looking for his friend, who I hope existed at one point.
I think if you kill him, you can get a letter off of him that kind of explains the situation. I don't remember exactly what it said.
Thought to do that. I never thought to do that.
See, I'm telling you something about your game. That's awesome. All right, that's a win. Next time you see him, kill him, and there's a letter on him.
I have such a hard time. I don't ever black hat it, as it were. I know that there are people who play the game and they get very. The thing I kind of love about both Red Dead games is that there's kind of a desire to be honorable. There's it feels better. Like I've played it through. I guess from the beginning. I'm on my third playthrough in a year, and Jimmy Brooks, the guy from Blackwater that you find on the edge of the cliff, I've never been able to kill him. I keep thinking I'll kill him this time. I can't do it. I always pull him up because I just don't think Arthur would. But that's what's sort of amazing is depending on the player, depending on the person. No two people are going to have the same experience playing this game.
Yeah, I keep 2 save files. I play honorably through the main story, but I have to admit I do have 1 save file that's completely unhonorable. I don't do the story at all because I don't like playing the story dishonorably, but it's just to have fun and go around and shoot people and run, but definitely not the story save file.
That's what I did with the first one, was I would never do anything bad as John, but once I was Jack, spoiler alert, I guess, but at this point we're past that anyway. But I would do all the awful stuff as Jack.
So do you have a favorite Easter egg in the game? I remember coming across the devil in a cave, and the tiny church was great. It's also super nice that some of the Easter eggs play out differently depending on whether you're playing as Arthur or John.
Yeah. I think that's favorite Easter eggs. I kind of fancy finding that woolly mammoth, the bones up in the mountains. But, I know exactly my favorite. It's that guy that you think is dead but isn't, who's in love with Bonnie McFarlane that you find on the beach.
Yeah, that was so cool. And I got his letter and I read it and I was like, whoa. And it's funny because I first discovered that as John. And I don't think I was supposed to discover it as John. And so I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting because I wonder if that means he's keeping his mouth shut, at least your version of the character, when he sees Bonnie the first time.
John keeping a secret like that? No, that was such a cool little Easter egg leading into the first game, and I said, oh, Bonnie McFarlane, I know who she is. So I do want to move away from Red Dead for a little bit. You played Federal Agent Burley in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm just curious, do you know if your character survived the snap?
I like to think so, but if he didn't survive the snap, he survived the blip, so he's back.
Yeah. He's back.
I certainly hope we'll see more of him. I had so much fun working with Randall Park in particular, but Suhaila, who played another agent, I think her name might be Agent Pearson. But that was just a ton of fun to do. And I ended up, you don't see too much of it in the film, but I got to drive an SUV at pretty high speeds down the streets of San Francisco, chasing Giant Man. And as a kid who grew up loving Marvel Comics, that was maybe one of the greatest days of my life, getting to look up at what I knew was going to end up being Giant Man, or at least the Giant Man suit. But Randall is such a magnificent scene partner and just a great guy to work with, that I would cherish any opportunity to go back in. And I just think, that was Peyton Reed who directed both of the Ant-Man films, and he's just a splendid guy. He brought me in on that, and that was really just a big thrill. I do know it was announced at D23 that Jimmy Woo was returning to the WandaVision show on, I guess it's the Disney Plus channel. And I certainly hope that he's going to need backup. But, you never know with these things.
Yeah. I was actually going to bring that up. So hopefully when that show comes out, you'll have a new job. So hold out hope.
I will take it. I will take it. But that's, thank you you keep your fingers crossed on my behalf. I certainly would love that. And Burley was it was a treat to play him. We didn't know, I liked the idea that he wasn't going to speak at all. And that then, because it was just sort of interesting to me that I was playing at the same time Gus, who does nothing but talk incessantly. I liked the idea of saying nothing.
Yeah.
That yielded, I think I'm allowed to say it, but that yielded an idea that we shot, which was the last time that Scott Lang played, of course, magnificently by Paul Rudd, who is really just an extraordinary performer, among other things. He was also writing and producing at the same time he was working, so that guy had a lot on his plate and did such a great job. We had this scene where he's saying goodbye to Wu, and Wu and he are talking about maybe getting together for dinner, and Wu sort of flummoxed, and then he walks out, and then we shot me lingering behind and basically saying something to the effect of, don't jerk Wu around, he's my friend, he's a good guy. And the gag was going to be that they were going to make my voice sound very incongruous. It was maybe like a little girl or a prepubescent young man. And when I showed up for to shoot the stuff in San Francisco, that was a couple of months later, and Peyton was so excited because he thought the scene played so funny. Oh, and I think so. I would talk like with a weird voice, and then they shot Paul saying, I did not expect him to sound like that, or something to that effect. And at the end of the day, it ended up being too broad, and so it was jettisoned. I think probably rightly so. And the good news was that then when we went in to do reshoots, I got to do a scene with a hero of mine, Michael Douglas, and it's not every day you get to act opposite somebody that you've admired for as long as you've been acting. And I hope I didn't screw up that scene too much. But that was, they knew that Burley was actually going to have a real voice. So I'm kind of glad in the long run that I'm not stuck sounding weird in the Marvel Universe.
Especially next to Michael Douglas.
Oh, God, yeah. Who is just, magnificent. And
yeah.
His work is always so good. And at the time we were doing that, he was also doing the Kominsky method at the same time. So he was working really hard. And as you'd hope to know, he's just a consummate professional.
So you were also on an episode of Parks and Rec where you played a foreman assigned to renovate one of the city hall floors, but you were immediately shut down by Ron Swanson. Was that a fun role to do?
Oh, come on. Yes, of course. That was a great deal of fun. I had known, very tangentially, I'd known Nick Offerman and his wife Megan through LA Theater. They were in a theater company at the turn of the millennium called Evidence Room, and I was in a theater company called Zoo District, and we both were sort of very well regarded in the small firm at 99 Seat Equity Waiver Theater in Los Angeles. So I knew Nick from those days a little bit, but I'd also come to admire his work on Parks and Rec. Chris Pratt is one of my best friends, and we've been friends for forever. So that was a lot of fun also just to be able to hang out with him that day. We didn't shoot together, but we were on set the same day.
Yeah.
And then the other joy of it as a fan was being able to walk the set of Pawnee City Hall and see all of those just amazing murals that line the halls up close and really get to take my time with them. So that whole day was a breeze. And again, how you don't often get such an easy gig when you've got an actor at the top of his game as Nick remains, and certainly was at that point in Parks and Rec. And all I had to really do was just listen. And, but it's so beautifully shot. It's so wonderfully done. I ended up with Foreman George is a pretty great character name to have preserved for eternity. And I was really happy too, because it ended up being that's quite a pivotal scene in the lore of the entire series, because that ends up being their permanent offices at the end of the series. Is that the built by Ron, not me. That scene actually has some relevance over the overall story of Parks and Rec. Tickles me. I'm very, very, very honored that I got to be a part of what I think is one of the great sitcoms in television history.
Absolutely. I didn't realize until you said it just now, but Foreman George and then George Foreman.
There you go. Now you got it.
So, this is actually a fan question that I got. There's a lot of buzz around this interview. People were really excited about this, but this one comes from Josh. And so he said, so I know you had a role in Eli Roth's unaired animated series, Chowderheads. And can you tell me the show you were on, and do you ever think it'll see the light of day?
Chowderheads. Well, Eli and I go back to, I think we were about 2 years old when we met. And we have remained friends ever since. And he, I don't know how he talked his way into getting that, but Chowderheads was an interstitial series, which means it was to run in a bit like, if you know the history of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
The Simpsons started as little interstitial shorts on the Tracy Ullman show. So they were little, 45 seconds to a minute and a half to 3 minute little self-contained comic strips. And Chowderheads was kind of in that vein. And like a lot of Eli's work, it dealt with our shared history growing up as, pardon the expression, massholes in Massachusetts. So, he did all of his characters had, I've got it on half-inch tape in my closet somewhere, but I played, I think, a wrestler character, I think, named Buff Bagwell, and it was, it was a lot of fun. Will it see the light of day? If it isn't somewhere on one of his DVDs, I expect someday it will be, and if it hasn't, it's likely because of some issue with securing the rights or to it. But it was gonna air, I think, during wrestling, during WWE or something like that. And it was one of the, for some reason I keep getting hired to play wrestling character. I have been for a lot of my career hired to play wrestlers of one form or another. I did a Disney show where I played a former wrestler. Buff Bagwell was the same. So I don't know if it'll see the light of day. I do know that it was, as all of Eli's stuff is, it was infused with his kind of devious sense of humor. And it was, just another example of Eli finding a way to create something as he has always done. I mean, he's an extraordinarily hard worker, an extraordinarily inventive man, and a good friend.
Mm-hmm. So we touched on this a little bit, but you also perform on stage. What was your most memorable stage performance?
Well, that's pretty easy. I just was reflecting on this. I posted something on Instagram, I think, last week. But when we were talking about Nick Offerman and he was in the evidence room, they had, in the year 2000, I think it was, a show called Berlin Chalk Circle, which was taken from Brecht. And I was lucky enough to do a play at my theater company, which was called Zoo District. That was, I'm going to forget one of the translators' names, but the producer and one of the translators at the play that we did was Michael Franco, who remains quite an important part of the LA theater scene. And he produced it. My friend Lauren Rubin directed it, and it was an ensemble of about 30 actors based on Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita. And I got to play Woland, and Woland is Bulgakov's version of Satan. He's the devil, and he brings a retinue of demons with him to Moscow because word has made it to Satan that human beings believe that communism has made humanity better. And so the devil wants to see if that's true. And that's sort of his mission, and it's told in concert with another story of a writer who's thought to be insane, who falls in love with Margarita, and that writer, who is the master, is writing a story of the true story of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion, and that story is told at the same time. So it was just this massive 3.5-hour play that had flying pigs and naked women and magic and just extraordinary writing, extraordinary ensemble. And to be the devil in the midst of all of that was a real highlight of my career. And we ran it as much as we could. We sold our houses for the better part of I think 8 or 9 months in Los Angeles, which is not something that happens every day. We did nearly 100 performances, and that was great. And then the only other stage performance, I mean, I guess I was Tevye in high school. I think I was, for a 17-year-old Tevye, I think I did okay. That was fun. And then the last live show I did before I moved to LA, the last one I did in New York, I'm very fond of. I remain very fond of. The director was named Chris Hayes. I was sad to learn he passed away this year. But that was a play called Bloody Poetry, written by Howard Brenton, and I got to play Lord Byron, who I share a middle name with, although I'm not named after Lord Byron. I'm named after my grandfather, Byron. But it was a lot of fun to play Byron. And anytime you get to play an historic figure, it's a lot of fun because there you can really dig your teeth into the research, and I ended up learning a great deal about Byron in order to play him, and those lessons remain.
Yeah. So, fun fact, my junior year in high school, I had to read The Master and Margarita. Loved it. And my senior quote would have been, manuscripts don't burn, but they wouldn't let me because they didn't want me.
Why wouldn't they let you?
I have no idea. Burning books, maybe something to do with that, but I had to change it. I was kind of upset about that. So that's really incredible that that's one of your most memorable performances.
And that's one of the great lines I ever got to say out loud. Manuscripts don't burn. A diphthong and a diphthong in that. And amazing because if you know the history, Bulgakov himself burned the book and had to start over.
Yeah.
And the copy that we had, it was such a seditious and dangerous book at the time. I find it so ironic that your school would censor you on it, because the way that the translation that we had survived was it was handwritten and it was passed from family to family, and you get a copy of it, and you rewrite your own copy of it, and then you pass it on. And so it included a lot of things that Stalin had not allowed to be published in the original publication of Master and Margarita, and we got to put those into our play, but it is so funny that we are still dealing with people being afraid of art.
Yeah. We are running a bit over, and I do appreciate you spending so much time with us. I just want to touch on Red Dead a little bit more. Speaking of theatrical productions, how do you think Red Dead would do as a play?
Yeah. I don't know. Here's the thing. You know, I know that there's they've been turning things into other things for a long time, right? Like, I know there's talk of an Uncharted movie. They turned I Sunk Your Battleship into a movie. I understand from the perspective of a trusted intellectual property that's pre-sold, it makes it easier for producers to consider making something. But what I think is really great about Red Dead is I think it only exists as what it is. I don't quite know. I could see a series of books, I guess, that you could write about these characters in this world, but to put it on stage, I don't know how it functions. I don't know what value the theater would bring to it, and conversely, I don't know what value it would bring to the theater.
Okay.
There are a few good Western plays that I seem to remember a play called Indians by Arthur Copeland, but that was a long time ago, and that was a little bit about Buffalo Bill. But would you want, Deadwood to be anything other than what David Milch created? I mean, I don't know. I think Deadwood is so wonderful as it is, and thankfully they got to really put a cap on that story at long last. But I don't know that it needs to be anything more than it is, and I think Red Dead fits exactly where it is meant to, and I'm quite happy with it. I think to want it to go into other corners is, I guess it's an interesting thought experiment, but I don't quite know that you could amplify on what has been achieved, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you had mentioned you could see it as a novel. Did you know in Grand Theft Auto 5 at Franklin's house, there's a book called Red Dead by Jay Marston?
You know that. Yeah, of course I know that. Yeah. I remember that. And there's also somebody, I think there's a vendor on Venice Beach, or whatever it's called in GTA 5, who's wearing a John Marston t-shirt that can be found as an Easter egg in GTA 5. And then someone also found, I think it's in one of the mountains, there's a trail called Arthur's Trail, which could have been foreshadowing, or it could be a coincidence.
Yeah. In Grand Theft Auto Online, one of the character selections for the father is John Marston, and so when I created my character, my father was John. So maybe Dutch was my grandfather in a past life. Who knows?
Well, it's also, there could be some question as to who's Jack's father.
Yeah. So the cinematic leading up to Braithwaite Manor, as you mentioned earlier, is probably one of the most badass scenes in any movie, television game, show, etc. that I've ever seen. Do you have any other moments that stick out in your head as being equally as badass?
In all of popular fiction?
No, in Red Dead, in general.
Oh. In general, yeah, I think there's so many, we are blessed with a popular culture that is filled with badass moments. Within Red Dead, God, we knew that was something special, and it took a long time to do. I mean, just us walking, sort of the seven of us. I think it's seven of us, but us just walking up to the mansion, that took the better part of a day for reasons I can't go into. But that's all of us all together, and boy, howdy, that was a lot of fun, and I certainly. I really enjoyed those sorts of moments that Dutch has, where he seems to be offering a peaceful outcome, and then it becomes so clear that his intention was just to catch you off guard so he could get the drop on you, as he does there. That was a lot of fun. And then the woman who played Catherine Braithwaite was so operatic with her agony and her screams. The whole thing is just pretty remarkable. I was very fond of working with Jim Peary, who played Angelo Bronte. You brought up the panel in Boston. I watched it a couple of days ago and saw that I called him Sergio Bronte, and I feel like a complete buffoon for having done it. But
wasn't going to bring that up, but I didn't catch that as well.
I did not notice it when it happened, or I would have corrected myself on the spot. But I saw that afterwards. I don't know where the hell that came from. No, properly called and properly played by Jim Peary, Angelo Bronte. The scene with him in the skiff when Dutch really goes full Dutch on him was an extraordinarily rewarding day of work, and I knew that we had found something really special that day. But then to see that finished piece, edited and so well staged by Rod Edge. There's another Freudian slip. I guess he might be the leader of the gang, Rod. But with the music that was so perfect, I mean, that crescendo, we got to the end of that scene, and I had to pause. I paused the game. I turned off the television set. I sat in silence for a minute, just sort of sat with it. And then I got on the phone and I called Rod, and I was practically in tears. I just couldn't believe how beautifully that would all come together. And, that's, the thing is that it is such an embarrassment of riches, seems big and small, again, to your earlier question, Kevin, they're not going anywhere. And that is pretty remarkable.
So I'm going to have to go for a second. I'm going to go trademark the term full Dutch for whenever someone goes crazy on someone else.
Well, that would be, we'd get to the end of the take, and Rod would go, yeah, okay, I think you got it, but now could you be a little more Dutchy? So we would say that in the green room. Right? You gotta get that a little more Dutchy, a little more Dutch in there. And it was the thing about him, like you knew it when you had it, and you knew it when you didn't. There were days I couldn't quite find them, and they were challenging days. But when I could find them, they were great. And it'd be interesting. As I would be amping up for a 3-week shoot, I would start to sort of, without being too, self-important, I would start to really think about being Dutch more and being me a little less. I'd walk a little taller. I'd be a little bolder. And woe to the poor cab driver who pissed me off. When I was getting ready to be Dutch, I would let them have it, and it was fun.
So the Blackwater Massacre is an integral part of both Redemption games, being the catalyst that starts the events of number 2 and a key factor in John's encounter with the mysterious man in number 1. Do you think we'll ever get to see it, or do you think it's better left shrouded in mystery?
I thought for sure we would see it. But I think I would never second guess these guys. They knew what they were doing. And I think that the fact that it is that you and Arthur, who you're playing as, that both you and Arthur, you the player, and Arthur are in the dark as to what happened at the beginning of the game, I think is a minor work of absolute genius, because it allows you to be a little bit on the outside of the game at the beginning. And so it makes you learning about all of the things that are happening in the world much more organic, if that makes any sense. But again, I won't second guess the choices that they made.
As you said, we were in the dark. And at the beginning of Red Dead 2, we're literally in the dark. I mean, it's pitch black. And I thought that was such an awesome, I had no idea what was going on. And then I see Arthur and Dutch going up to Micah. Was that interesting because was it darker when you shot that? And did you know the setting that you were going to be in for that?
Well, I think I can answer this without getting in trouble. I think I can. Well, we're going to find out. The day that we shot Micah's entrance, the first time we see Micah, and he's got that lantern next to his face, and it's shortly after that, the volume, the lighting on the volume is non-negotiable, and the volume's the soundstage we work on. And the lighting's non-negotiable because the lighting is how the infrared cameras see all of the reflective balls that are on all of our bodies. And so there's never mood lighting, as it were, that's appropriate to the scene that we're working on, which is one of the challenges. And on the day that we shot that, and I've been playing video games my whole life. And there's one thing that's sort of true and has been true of open world games in my experience, and I'm certainly ignorant to many titles, so if I say something that's hyperbolic or inaccurate, it's my own ignorance, and I don't mean to be dismissing any work that I might not be familiar with. But in my experience, night in video games is very seldom like night in the world. Particularly if you're in a mountain setting, there's something always about nighttime in video games that to me reminds me of shooting day for night in films. Like everything's kind of blue. The shadows aren't any deeper. You can still kind of see everything. It's just not as brightly lit, but it's basically, it doesn't alter the feeling of the environment too profoundly. You basically go from sort of bright, light, sandy tones into deep blue, purple tones, but otherwise the visibility and everything else is just about the same. We're doing the scene with Micah and all of us meeting on horseback, and the director recognizes that we're not quite finding the tone. And so for the first time, and we've been on it maybe two and a half, maybe 3 years, we're invited back to see what the in-game environment looks like. And that's the first time I've been shown it while we were working on the game. And so it was the first time I saw what a horse was going to look like, and I saw what snow was going to look like, and I saw that there were these, the footprints were in the snow looked photoreal, and then if you waited long enough, snow was piling up on our character's shoulders and on the haunches of the horse, and the thing that I saw that was the most remarkable was that it was literally nighttime. It looked like night. It looked real, and instead of going from being shown that right back into capturing the scene, we all sort of were dumbfounded. I mean, and this is, at least 3 years before the game had come out. This is years before any footage of the game existed, and we've been shown this to help us understand what we were in the middle of. And I looked at Rob and I said, "Why didn't you tell me how extraordinary this was going to be?" And he said, "Because you can't describe it. You can't describe it. You have to see it. You have to participate in it to really understand what it is." And again, I could just be ignorant to other titles that have already done it, but I think what was achieved in terms of real nature, again, with the sound design, but also with the environments and how every night it's not like this night and day. You've got nights with a full moon that are very appropriately bright with shadows falling. You've got nights with no moon, like the nights at the beginning, where you can't see into the shadows. It is dark, and candlelight really matters. And that, to me, that's it's one of the things that just makes this thing so remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could live anywhere in the Red Dead Redemption world besides Tahiti, what would you choose?
Wow. I guess I could live anywhere in that world. I guess I'd have to say, wow, that's a tough question. I think I'd like the summer in Strawberry, and I think I might do winters in Rhodes. But I like a big lake, and I'm trying to think. There's not really a community on a lake in Red Dead, I guess, except for that one town with the unfortunate folk that live in it. I wouldn't want to live there. Yeah. Although I guess if I really had to choose, I like Horseshoe Overlook. I like being close to Valentine but not in it, and I like everybody's mood when you're there.
I think my favorite camp is Scarlet Meadows. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, Scarlet Meadows is right, yeah. I believe, right outside of Rhodes.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah, exactly. And you get the boat out on Flatiron Lake. Flatiron Lake.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was so cool. You could upgrade the camp. I mean, of course, Duchess had to come first, but then you got Arthur. And then the cool thing about Arthur is you got a fast travel map. So that's really integral, I think, is to get the camp up and running. Like, get the upgrades, people.
Oh, no question. And I think if I play it again, I'll get the Horseshoe Overlook and get all of that. I'll get everything out of the way, and then you'll start the story without any grinding left to do.
Yeah. So I just have a couple more questions. These are completely potpourri and totally absurd. Feel free not to answer them, but just know that by not answering them, we're going to have to assume what your answer would have been.
Okay, that's ominous. Go for it. Let's
Who
hear
is your
it.
childhood celebrity crush?
Childhood celebrity crush. I had plenty of them. I think I had a crush on Christy McNichol, and I had a crush on a young Diane Lane, who was in a wonderful little movie called A Little Romance. I'd say, yeah, I guess I'll go with Diane Lane. If I thought about it, there's more. But yeah, Diane Lane. I also had a crush on Kathy Ireland, but that's a bit more. It's not less than childhood.
Careful, Ben. You're making it sound like that you were the average teenage boy. So
yeah, well, there it is. The truth can be told.
What would we catch Benjamin Byron Davis watching on TV late Saturday night?
Right now, it's I just finished it. It was Mindhunter, which I like a lot. And now I'm really late to the party, but The Good Place, I am just so in love with. I think it's so good and intelligent and funny and well played and performed. But then late on a Saturday night, I might go into my film collection, and what's a good one I just watched recently. I'm reading Irwin Winkler's biography of life and movies right now, and I think I'm going to go through all of his films again shortly. But I'll have on a Kubrick or a Scorsese or I like my old school films.
Yeah. Where in The Good Place are you?
I'm caught up. I'm all the way through it.
So the season finale of season 1, that cliffhanger where they were like, I'm not going to say it because it's incredible. I was blown away because I did not see it coming at all. what a brilliant writer Michael Schur is, and I just want to give him credit because...
No question, but it's also, think about what he's done. He's created this whole realm. He's created this entire lore, and he's done something that sitcoms are not supposed to do, which is it is totally linear storytelling from one episode to the next, and you need them all. I think it is, beyond that, the fact that he is bringing real philosophy to the masses in a way that, before I went to NYU, I spent a couple of years at the University of Chicago. I had to read The Grounding for the Metaphysics of Morals by Immanuel Kant and Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. And you don't often get to talk to people in California or anywhere that have also read those books. So the fact that they're now, on the tip of everybody's tongues who've watched this really thoughtful show, I mean, I think it is, lots of people talk about the death of network television, but when you've got Michael Schur and you've got such an extraordinary cast doing such extraordinary work, network television seems quite fine when you look at The Good Place. I'm really, really impressed by it.
Yeah, I'm sort of sad that next season's the last season, but I also understand that's a finite story that I wouldn't want to be drug out.
Right. Well, that's, again, when you're working with people that are at the top of their game, you want to trust their judgment. And I trust the judgment of the creators of that show because it really is, it's something special.
If you could be any Microsoft Office program, which would you choose?
I would choose a third-party developer. I'm staying out of that one.
All right, and last question, probably the hardest question, and I always ask this last because if the answer's wrong, I just hang up on you. So be prepared.
Okay. Oh, my goodness.
Does pineapple belong on pizza? Oh.
Hang on. I just need to get prepared. I don't want to get hung up on. All right. I think I heard it. But, and here comes a fire truck just to save me.
Benjamin Byron Davis, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Well, some people will say this is a hedge, but I think that pizza is a very personal thing. And I will tell you what, I have had a slice of Hawaiian pizza that I thought was not terrible, but I have mostly had Hawaiian pizza that I think is terrible. So, does it belong on pizza? I'm on the side of the maverick who puts it there, but I can't say that I've enjoyed it often.
Okay, I'll give it to you. You can stay.
I pulled it off. All right.
So I just want to thank our very special guest, Benjamin Byron Davis, once again for being with us today. Do you have any final Dutch words of wisdom for our audience?
Well, I don't. The thing about it, people ask me to speak this Dutch all the time, and without Dan Houser, Rupert Humphreys, and Michael Unsworth, Dutch would be pretty much speechless. So I don't like to pretend I know what he would say. But I can say this, Kevin. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk with you and with your listeners, and it means a great deal to me to have such thoughtful questions and the room in which to answer them. And so thank you for reaching out. In terms of when I am asked a question like that, I'm reminded of a quote that has served me well. That is Robert Louis Stevenson, not Dutch Vanderland, but I think it lines up with something that Dutch might agree with, and that is the idea that to travel hopefully is a better thing than to arrive. And I have been served well by ruminating on that and finding that is true. And, my travels have brought me to you, and your show makes me quite pleased indeed.
So, you didn't ask Dan Hauser to write you a line that's what's said to my audience in preparation of this? I'm offended.
I apologize. He can be difficult to get a hold of, and I certainly wouldn't want to burden him.
I totally understand. Wow, I love how in-depth we got. To hear the rest of our interview with Mr. Benjamin Byron Davis, you can check out our podcast every Wednesday at anchor.fm/ComiCulture. Also available wherever else you digest your podcasts. And now on to our interview with local artist and musician Joey Souza. Hey, this is Kevin from ComiCulture. I'm here with Joey the Joey. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Kevin. How are you doing?
Doing good. How do you pronounce your last name again?
Souza.
Souza. That's what I thought. I didn't want to butcher it, so I
it
just
gets confused. So yeah, no worries.
It's a beautiful day. You just ran into an old friend from high school, right?
I did. My good buddy Chris Sharp. Shout out to Chris Sharp out there in Radioland.
Chris Sharp owns a frame shop here in town, right?
That's what he does. He's also an artist. He does a lot of cool airbrush stuff.
Oh, that's cool. That's really interesting. Speaking of art, tell me about yourself. What's your background leading into you becoming an artist?
Well, I mean, I've been drawing pretty much as long as I can remember. My mom has, like, I don't even know, a huge, gigantic boxes full of drawings since the time I was in preschool until I stopped letting her save my drawings. And I was just always really into, cartoons, the early 90s Nickelodeon stuff. My dad's a real big hot rod guy, so the whole Rat Fink scene was always an inspiration to me. And then I went to a pretty small high school. They didn't have like a great art program, but the teacher there, he was he was pretty inspiring and supportive. He did a lot of cartoon work as well, so it was always helpful. And then after high school, I did 2 years of college, which I did not like. So I ended up meeting up with Mark from sickanimation.com, and I lied to him and told him I knew how to do animation, and I got into animation, helping him out, doing stuff like that. And been on Comedy Central shows from that, and just doing that day to day now.
Did he ever find out that you lied to him?
He did, because I did an interview with someone else where I admitted to it, and he read the interview.
I just want to make sure that I wasn't spoiling that for him just now. So, what's some of the work you've done on Comedy Central?
With that show Trip Tank.
Yeah?
Yeah, which is like a compilation animation of animated shorts. Mark from Sick Animation, he got hired to do 2 shorts, so I helped him finish those, did like the in-between animation, the backgrounds and stuff, and they aired on 2 different episodes. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about your inspiration. Where do you have a pretty distinct style of artwork, and it's pretty, I don't want to say flamboyant, that's a really terrible word for it. It's pretty out there.
Yeah.
But it's really cool, and I really like it. Where does your inspiration come from when you're getting a new design?
A lot of it is like, I think my style is kind of like 90s cartoon meets early 2000s Hot Topic band shirts.
Okay,
Like, that was always kind of the things that I was drawn to. So, yeah, it's just, I like to make things that are bold and recognizable and detailed. And, yeah, I like working with other people, so I work with a lot of bands, and if they have any ideas at all, like, I really like running with those ideas they have, because sometimes it's hard to just keep coming up with your own ideas all the time.
Some of those Hot Topic band shirts were so badass. The one that always sticks out in my head is the Reptar Devil Wears Prada t-shirt, like the OG. It just seems like that's a trend that I kind of miss, and I slightly wish it would come back.
Yeah, like there was a period where heavy metal in particular, the shirts and the image was a lot more fun, and it became a lot darker and more serious as of lately.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely some bands that are sort of bringing it back, but that's definitely, I like bold, colorful, bright. Also, the printing of shirts got more expensive, so it's harder to get a lot of bright colors on a shirt, I suppose.
It's a lot of tree roots these days with their logos.
Yeah,
kind of hard to read.
Yeah.
So, one of those bands that keeps up with those colorful designs, I think you might have heard of them, is Steak Socks Mustache.
That's my band.
Oh, yeah! I actually knew that.
Surprisingly, I'm in that band.
So, tell me about the genesis of that. That's you, Brett Roos, Eric Fuchs, and then Taylor Bates.
That's us.
You guys are just incredible on stage. Every time I see you, you have so much fun. What was the genesis of you starting in that band?
Well, so it starts about, let's say, 9 years ago. I was playing in a sort of doom band with Eric, we played 3 shows, and then one day I went to go pick up some of my equipment from Eric's house, and he was jamming with Brett, and it was sort of like walking in on your girlfriend cheating on you. And I was listening to a little bit of what they were doing, and I liked it, and Brett was like, yeah, if you want to play bass, we need a bass player. So I picked up a bass rig just to be in that band, just to be a part of something, because I was so lonely.
Yeah.
And me, Eric, and Brett, we had a different vocalist at the time, Cody Prose. Shout out to Cody. We played shows as that for about 2 years, probably, maybe 3 years. And then we met Taylor, and we liked his style, we liked his vibe, and we did that. And, I think we played with Taylor for 5 years now, but definitely over the last 2 years, we've sort of come into our whole thing of what we're doing and what works best for us, and it feels good.
His American flag, whatever you want to call that.
His
thing.
Wrestling singlet or onesie.
His banana hammock is it's quite interesting. You guys' this whole persona on stage is so awesome. So Brett started Steak Sauce, right? And then it kind of died out for a little bit, and then he brought it back.
Yeah, so it's actually funny because Brett was doing Steak Sauce, let's say, in 2006 or 7 maybe, and I was in a different band called Devour the Living, and Eric was in another band called Edgar and the Shoes, and all 3 of us hated each other because that's how music was back then when we were 17, 18 years old. But we all, put our differences aside, and we've made something that's pretty fun.
You and Eric were 17, 18. Brett was still 40.
Yeah, that's true. Brett's always been 40.
I remember the first time I found out he was like that age. I was like, no way. Like,
yeah, it's definitely a shocker. He certainly does not act like
he's a young pup. So you're a huge into 90s cartoons. What would you say your favorite top 4 90s, and they could even bleed over into the early 2000s cartoons are?
Definitely Rocko's Modern Life, All Real Monsters, Ren and Stimpy, and The Simpsons.
Okay, awesome. I told you about this. I had Carlos Alazraki, who was Rocco, on a couple weeks ago, and then you had mentioned that he was on Reno 911, and I totally forgot about that until I was prepping for the interview with them, and I went and watched some back episodes. Like, wow, this guy is kind of a creep.
Yeah, it's not something you'd expect, because, his voice is completely different. Yeah. It doesn't seem like the voice that's coming out of that person whatsoever.
Yeah.
So.
All Real Monsters, that's a good one. There's been a lot of renaissance on 90s shows coming back. I think All Real Monsters would do really well today.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, it's stylistically is like it's so crazy how much time they spent on animation back then.
Yeah.
Like, because frame to frame, that show, the detail of just like single characters is just out of control.
Yeah, There's an episode I remember, and I can't remember anything about it, but it scared the crap out of me as a child. And, which is not surprising with a show like that, but, God, I wish I could remember it. So yeah, Rocco, did you ever notice when you were a kid that there was a lot of dirty jokes, or did it come to you later?
It definitely came later, which is funny that, like, Ren and Stimpy always seemed like the disgusting show, but watching them now, Ren and Stimpy was very upfront with the disgustingness. There was not a lot of secret, dirty stuff, but Rocko's Modern Life has some pretty filthy, weird jokes. Also, I just randomly saw an episode on the other day, and they made a Scientology joke, which is ahead of its time for 1994.
Yeah, there's the one where he's blatantly a sex operator.
Yeah,
like,
where this instruction sign for his job says "Be sexy."
Yeah. Carlos actually did that on air. He was like, "Oh baby, oh baby, oh baby." I was like, I was dying.
It's one of my favorite lines from any cartoon show ever.
So, did you watch the Revival movie?
I did. I actually just watched it last week.
What'd you think of it?
I really liked it. I thought that it has like a fun sort of meta message about, holding on to the past and wanting old things to come back, which is exactly what they did with it, but at least they were sort of self-aware about it.
Yeah.
Because I sort of feel the same way.
Rocco was always really self-aware of himself, and I really feel like they did a great job, and there was a certain part in it, and I'm not going to spoil it, where a character made a change, and they were just like, oh, cool, and like they moved on, and it was so, quote-unquote, woke.
Yeah.
Like that would not have flown back in 1994.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. It was an interesting choice, and obviously, it just fit with the whole idea of just like, hey, let's all just move on. Like,
yeah.
old things are old things. There's new things to be had.
Yeah, and then did you see the Invader Zim one yet?
I haven't watched that one yet.
It's pretty good. Very interesting. If there was another show that you could have rebooted, what would it be?
Oh man. Well, they're redoing Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah,
so I'm excited about that one. But I mean, they did reboot Beavis and Butthead, which was a fan of the reboot. So if they wanted to reboot it a second time, I would be 100% on board for that.
I would like to see a reboot of King of the Hill.
I would like that too.
I think Hank Hill in today's climate would have a very hard time wrestling being with a Republican from Texas.
Yeah.
Because even though he's a Republican from Texas, he still has some morals.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see him with today's current.
Yeah. Also, I think if there's any television show that accurately portrays the relationship between me and my own dad, it's definitely the Hank Hill Bobby Hill relationship.
So your dad doesn't think you're right?
It's it's pretty accurate. And the short pants, obviously.
Short pants, not the buzz cut though.
No, thank God for that.
Yeah.
This long, luscious, beautiful hair that you can't see.
It's pretty luscious. I mean, I'm kind of jealous of it. So, aside from 90s cartoons, what are some of your other geeky passions?
Let's see. I'm really into music. I'm really pretty heavy into musical equipment, effects pedals, getting real into weird kind of stuff. If you listen to the Steak Sauce stuff, there's a lot of weird kind of noise work in between the tracks. That's all me. It's all done with weird equipment that I've picked up over the years. So I spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos on how to get weird sounds out of sort of standard guitar pedals and effects and whatnot, synthesizers. Other than that, I'm really big on trivia. Been doing a bar trivia night every Thursday in Grants Pass. It's been fun. So, I guess educational nerdiness, you could say, is my thing.
Nerdiness is nerdiness, man.
Yeah.
So, trivia. Ask me a trivia question.
Let's see. What was one of the ones from the other night? Do you know that, let's see. They're all audio clips that I can think of, so I'd have to sing you part of a song. How about give me a song that has the word age in it, because that was the category.
What's my age again?
Perfect. That was the first one I had too.
Other than that, I can't think of one off the top of my head besides What's My Age Again.
Yeah, it was a lot of ones that had like 21 Savage was one of them, so it was they kind of tried to trick you a little bit.
Teenage Wasteland, Bob O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Okay, so
see, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Rock of Ages by Def Leppard, that was one of them. Yeah.
Okay, I see it now. So it doesn't have to necessarily be age, it has to have age in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they really threw that wrench in there for you. One of them was the Florida-Georgia line, which the A from Florida and the GE from Georgia made age. That was a real...
That's a stretch.
Yeah. But luckily my sister, she listens to a lot of terrible music. She knew that one immediately, so...
Shout out to all the terrible music listeners out there.
Shout out to everyone who likes bad music.
I like bad music. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Speaking of bad, if you want... Okay, speaking of geek things, I'm a real big geek for horrible, bad horror movies.
Dude, literally what's being talked about right now is that very topic. My friend Josh, he produces a podcast up in Salem, Schlock Talk, free bump for you. We do a weekly viewing of a terrible movie that none of us have seen. And last week we watched Blood Diner, which is this really cheesy 80s B horror movie where they run a vegan cafe and they murder people in the back and then they feed the remains to the vegans. All in a attempt to resurrect Sheetar, the Egyptian goddess of death.
Nice.
So yeah.
Sounds right up my alley. I believe I've heard the title of it before, but I've not seen it. But I will check that out.
Are you into trauma films?
Yeah, Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High, all those things.
Have you seen Terror Firmer?
I have. I actually have a poster for it, too.
Terror Firmer gave me a deep-rooted psychological fear of escalators.
Yeah, Lloyd Kaufman. I actually met Lloyd Kaufman in Salem. They did a premiere of Return to Nukem High at a movie theater there.
Nice.
So I have his autograph on a Toxic Avenger action figure.
I have his autograph on a Toxic Avenger pin.
Nice.
So
right on.
That's awesome. Yeah, trauma films are great. There's something about over-the-top gore that
Yeah.
you fall in love with.
Yeah. My personal opinion, I think bad movies are better than good movies.
Yeah.
I would rather watch a terribly made movie than go watch whatever popular movies in the theater right now. I'm not sure.
I would much rather watch them with other friends, though. If I
Yeah.
sit down and watch it by myself, I'm not going to get through it.
Yeah, they're definitely party movies for sure.
Have you seen The Room?
I have. Several times. And I saw the that movie that's about The Room.
The Disaster Artist? I'm actually interviewing Tommy Wiseau in a couple weeks.
Right on.
I'm about to clip that out. That's okay. So you've seen The Room, you liked it.
Yeah. Have you seen Birdemic? Shock and Terror?
Yeah.
That's up there for The Room with me.
There's a new one coming out. I think it's already out. It's called Clownado. It's kind of like Sharknado, but it's with clowns.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I just, actually, me and Taylor from Steak Sauce, we just went and saw It Chapter 2 on opening night, Thursday.
It was good, huh?
Yeah, I liked it. It was pretty wild. It was very Evil Dead style. A lot of wackiness.
Yeah, it was kind of long, but
yeah, it was actually I was pretty surprised to find out that it was almost 3 hours long. I didn't quite feel that. The movie that I'd seen before that was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is 10 minutes shorter than that one, but I felt like a half an hour at least longer.
Yeah,
but I still enjoyed both of them.
Once Upon a Time was great for way different reasons. I loved it as well. There's a part in Once Upon a Time. I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but. I didn't know that Bruce Lee was Kato from The Green Hornet until I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That scene was it was a little weird, I thought.
Yeah, because Brad Pitt's character is obviously not a real person.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, he's going to beat up Bruce Lee. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that story is actually based on a true story, but it was taken completely out of context in a weird way. But I am a fan of Quentin Tarantino's idea of putting fictional characters into real life events, sort of how Inglourious Bastards put these new guys into the World War II and they kill Hitler.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting take on history.
Spoilers, man.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
How old is Inglourious Bastards? It's like over 10 years, right?
Probably.
if you haven't seen a movie that's over 10 years old, it's going to get spoiled for
It's
you.
your fault. I won't spoil it, though.
I mean, if you haven't seen the original miniseries and if you haven't read the book, you should already know what happens.
It's true.
But,
Which I do not recommend ever reading the book.
No.
It's way too long.
Yeah.
And very confusing.
It's like, there's so many different plot points going on at once in the book. I was just like,
Yeah.
amalgamate them into one for me.
Yeah, it's like, it's seven kids, I think, and each kid gets their own story about 15 times, so, I don't know what the math is on that, but it's a lot of redundancy.
It's a lot. It's like a worse version of the Game of Thrones books, because each chapter in Game of Thrones is from the point of view of someone else, of a particular character, but it makes sense. The ones with it could have all been one plot.
Yeah, exactly. Or it could have been about 3 kids, or we don't need to know about the stories of all of the kids.
Yeah, I mean, I'd much rather find out what Georgie's last thoughts were before he unfortunately passed away.
Before he gets his arm bit off, spoiler alert.
I kind of wish they would have pulled The Force Awakens and, like, his arm is just out there somewhere, like Luke's hand was with his lightsaber.
Right. When they're adults, he just finds it floating around in the sewer.
Yeah,
This is Georgie's arm.
It would have kept hydrated being in the sewers all that time.
Yeah, it would have been totally fine.
He just, like, mummifies it and, like, puts it as an idol to his own little brother.
We have this thing where at the end of every movie, we stay to the end of the credits just to hope that Samuel L. Jackson shows up to recruit everyone to the Avengers. Because how cool would it be if at the end of It, he shows up and recruits It to be in the Avengers, and eventually Disney just absorbs every movie property into one giant event?
Pretty close.
They're getting there.
I mean, they just lost Spider-Man, which sucks, but...
Well, Spider-Man would be out there slinging webs for someone else.
Unfortunate. Did you see the trailer for Birds of Prey?
I did not.
It was attached to It Chapter 2. It's the Harley Quinn movie.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah.
I did see that, but I did not pay attention to the title of it.
It looks good. I'm really excited for it. Margot Robbie did a great job in Suicide Squad.
She was definitely the best part of that movie, for sure.
Yeah. Really interesting that DC is continuing to try to build their cinematic universe.
Yeah, it's not a lot of it has gone very well.
They're good at solo movies, but they're not good at putting them together.
Yeah, that Justice League movie, I would say, had a couple of issues.
No, yeah. I'm pretty sure the movie that we saw wasn't even the original movie we were supposed to see.
Yeah, it was weird. And, like, everything that they do is, like, in such a weird CGI universe. It's sort of, like... It's not grounded in any sort of reality, so it becomes very, very hard to follow and focus on.
Yeah. Is there a movie franchise that you wish would stop making movies?
I mean, I am a huge fan of Star Wars. I feel like maybe they have 2 or 3 too many Star Wars movies, or at least, you know, they could cut down on releasing them so often. Maybe wait till you got a real good story before releasing another one.
They had a good story, and then Disney bought Lucasfilm and erased the good story.
Yeah, that's what Disney does.
I mean, the entire EU, I guess it's called Legends now, that I learned from the time I was 6 years old, are completely retconned, and I was like,
yeah,
I have to relearn all this history now.
Yeah.
At least they're incorporating some of the elements into the new movies, which I appreciate.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's also become like a weird thing. I feel like the whole Marvel universe is a little bit like this as well, where it's like it relies so heavily on you just knowing the characters in other movies that if you're a new viewer, it must be incredibly confusing.
Yeah.
Like, not to spoil the end of the Solo movie, but the part when Darth Maul shows up, to the casual movie viewer, that must have not made any sense at all.
I mean, I've seen Rebels and Clone Wars, and it still didn't make sense to me. Like, he's just randomly showing up.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I'm excited if they make another movie with him in it. That might be cool.
I am excited for the Obi-Wan Solo series.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I'm excited about all of them. It just doesn't mean I like... Honestly, I think that the worst Star Wars movie was The Last Jedi. I'll go on record saying that it's worse than The Phantom Menace. I'll say it's worse than the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Have you seen the full thing?
I have.
It's out there, and if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend it.
I highly recommend it as well. It also creates a weird narrative where Chewbacca has a family, which means Han Solo is just keeping him from his family all the time, which is kind of sad.
And he's naked the whole time.
Yeah.
No, that's from Robot Chicken. There's a Robot Chicken skit where he goes to Kashyyyk to meet Chewie's family, and they're all wearing clothes. He's like, you've just been naked this whole time.
Those Robot Chicken Star Wars specials are pretty good.
They're great. Robot Chicken is just super great in particular.
Yeah.
Moving on, you said that you wish the Marvel... It's getting even worse now because there's going to be like 5 or 6 series that tie directly into the movies. So you're not only going to have to watch, 23 movies?
Yeah.
You're going to have to watch WandaVision, Winter Soldier, and Falcon, just to even know what's going on. Like,
yeah, it's sort of how I felt about like the Punisher and Daredevil series on Netflix. It's like I was more excited to see the Punisher, but it's like in order for the Punisher series to make sense, you have to watch 2 seasons of Daredevil and maybe the one where they're all together is called. Yeah, and it's just it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. I could skip the Marvel series that were on Netflix, honestly.
Yeah.
I watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for like the first 3 or 4 seasons, and I haven't watched it since. It just got too weird even for Marvel.
Television in general, I feel like, has become very serialized, where everything, it's like if you miss an episode, you have no idea what's going on, and it's like, you know, I'm cool with just having a show that's just one-off stories, you know? Like, just give me a nice casual viewing, guys.
Like Workaholics or Rocko's Modern Life or 911, where there's overlying plot, but it's not like you have to watch every single episode to get it.
Yeah, because, like, you know, if I put it on Netflix and I fall asleep for an hour and a half, like, I want to be able to just wake up and be okay with where I woke up at.
Yeah. I always get funny when I'm binging on Netflix and it says, "Are you still watching?" Because I haven't touched my remote in like in a half an hour. And I'm like, you know that I am.
Yeah.
So...
I didn't just walk away and leave my laptop open. No one does that.
It sucks with Netflix. How I enjoy that I get to binge the entire season at once, but then I have to wait a whole year.
Yeah.
Like, can't you just make it weekly so I have like 10 weeks of this and then I have to wait another year?
Yeah. Yeah, I felt that way about Stranger Things every time that it's come out. I'm just like, man, I don't know when the next one of these is coming out, but I guess I'm going to have to wait.
Are you going to sing the Never Ending Story theme song for us right now?
I would if I remembered how it went.
Turn around. Look at what you see. That was so great.
Yeah. I thought the third season of that show was really good. It's silly, but like silly in like the best way.
I was really stoked when I'm not gonna spoil it, but how season 2 ended, like with them closing the gate.
Yeah.
But there was still a piece of the Mind Flayer out there, so like he had a reason to, like, he didn't just randomly show back up.
Yeah.
But it was who do you think the American is?
I mean, no spoilers, but I'm pretty sure we all have a good idea.
It's
Hellboy.
Yeah, it is Hellboy. That's quite astute. He just spoiled it for his opinion on it, but it is Hellboy.
Speaking of which, I thought that new Hellboy movie was exactly what I've always wanted from a Hellboy movie.
The Ron Perlman ones were tchotchke when I was a kid, but that new one was great.
Yeah. Which it got pretty bad reviews, but you know,
all the good movies do.
That's true.
What's a great movie that got bad reviews that you loved that got terrible reviews?
Oh man. I mean, probably most of the movies that I like. I can't imagine the Toxic Avenger Part 4's got real high reviews.
Yeah, but it's Trauma, so it's okay.
Yeah, Trauma knows what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, like, let's see. I just watched the movie Trick or Treat, not the new one, the old one about the heavy metal guy who comes back from the stereo. That movie is pretty rad, and I bet it's got a real low Rotten Tomatoes score.
What's a movie that got great reviews that you hated?
Pretty much most of them.
Mine is The Shape of Water. I couldn't stand that movie.
I didn't even bother watching it. It just didn't seem.
I love Guillermo del Toro, but I was like, I cannot watch this.
Yeah, which also I heard because he was supposed to be making a remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon, and that's what that movie turned into, which I would have much rather just had a terrible remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, there was a fish sex scene where I was like, I'm not against fish sex, but I'm against terrible depictions.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin is not against fish sex.
I mean, I'm not a participant.
They did make the fish man very hot. Also, the Fishman looks so much like Abe Sapien from Hellboy. It's like, how is it not the Abe Sapien origin story?
Yeah. Once again, Disney is going to just create one huge universe where he is the Abe Sapien. And
Hellboy joins forces with Pennywise the Clown from It, and they...
Maybe the American is Hellboy's origin story with, all the Russian testing.
That's true, yeah. They bring him back. That's the only way to bring him back is a demon from heck.
Yeah, I mean, they have the ability to open portals to the Upside Down. So.
Yeah, it's all one thing. Every movie exists in the same universe.
Have you seen, are you excited for the new Jay and Silent Bob?
Maybe. I love Kevin Smith movies. His last 5 have not been great. But, I'm always excited for a Jay and Silent Bob effort from him because they were seminal characters to me when I was in middle school and high school.
Yeah, you said a shared universe, so I automatically thought of Tusk and Yoga Hosers and how terrible they were. Well, we're kind of running out of time here, so do you have any final words that you want to give us? Any Joey words of wisdom?
Be happy, do what you like, come up with your own creative ideas. If you're unhappy about the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe has come together, create your own cinematic universe. And, be good to each other, don't text and drive, and, just have a good time. Yeah, Listen to Steak Sauce Mustache.
Listen to Steak Sauce Mustache. Available on Spotify, Bandcamp, and everywhere else where you digest
Apple Music.
All right, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
I did want to just touch base on one more thing that you just brought up. People who complain about movies, I'm like, you couldn't do it any better. So stop complaining.
Yeah, it's wasn't there a thing that 1 million people signed them to redo the last season of Game of Thrones because they didn't like it? I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah, it's just you're obviously not a writer, if you could write a better season, go ahead and go pitch it to HBO.
That's my thing. Just do your own thing. If you have an idea, and try and make it into something, because that's all the world needs.